"Don't talk. They're coming." The voice was barely a whisper, yet it sliced through the silence like a blade. Vivian Cross froze, one heel caught in the elevator doorway, her leather portfolio pressed tight against her chest. Her eyes darted to the corner of the dimly lit car. At first, she thought she'd imagined it a trick of exhaustion after another 15-hour day. Then she saw him. A boy, maybe 8 years old, curled in the shadows near the emergency panel, knees pulled to his chest. Wide eyes frightened far too, knowing for his small face. Vivian's heart kicked against her ribs. What is a child doing here? She parted her lips, but the boy's trembling hand shot up, palm outward. "Don't say a word," he hissed. Urgency trembled in his small voice. "They'll hear you." The doors slid shut, trapping them in a box of humming steel and fluorescent light. Vivian stood frozen, pulse hammering in her throat. She was CEO of Crosswell Enterprises, used to boardrooms and billion-dollar contracts. Not to being cornered in an elevator by a child whispering like a spy. "Who are you?" she whispered. The boy shook his head hard. "Shh." His eyes flicked toward the glowing red lens of the ceiling camera. "They're watching. Always watching." A chill ran down Vivian's spine. She nearly laughed at herself. Really, Vivian spooked by a kid. But something in his raw fear pinned her. She didn't laugh. The elevator jolted with a faint metallic groan, and in that fragile pause the boy whispered a single word that stopped her breath. "Vivian." Her name. Her body stiffened. "He knows my name." Before she could speak, the elevator chimed. The doors opened. A man in a navy blue janitor's uniform stood there, gripping a worn mop handle like a staff. He blinked, startled, his tired brown eyes darting from her to the boy. "Noah," he breathed. Relief flooded his voice. "There you are." The boy scrambled into his arms, clutching his shirt like claws. Vivian stepped back, her composure fraying. The janitor looked at her, shame darkening his expression. "I'm sorry, ma'am. He didn't mean to bother you." His voice was steady, rasped with a weight he carried alone. Vivian's chin lifted, armor returning. "What was your son doing in an elevator at midnight? Hiding like that?" The man's broad shoulders tightened. "It won't happen again. He just likes to hide. I'll talk to him." But Noah's muffled voice pressed through his father's chest. "She needs to know Dad." They said her name. Vivian's breath froze. The janitor, Daniel, his name tag read, shot his son a sharp, desperate look. "Enough, Noah." He forced a smile. "Kids make things up. I'll get him home." Vivian's instincts screamed to press further, but exhaustion twisted with irritation. Absurd. "I don't have time for riddles from janitor's kids." She straightened. "See that you do. And keep him out of places he doesn't belong." Her heels struck the marble lobby floor like gavel blows as she strode away. Yet Noah's whisper clung to her mind. "They said your name." Outside, the city hummed neon traffic, a saxophone bleeding through the night. Vivian's driver held open the sedan door, but she lingered, staring at her reflection in the tinted glass. Her name. Vivian Cross was not a woman easily shaken. She had clawed her way through betrayal, broken promises, and family greed. She'd built walls too high for anyone to breach, and yet a child's whisper had pierced them with ease. Behind her, Daniel crouched beside his son. "Noah," he said softly, though his tone was firm. "You can't say things like that to strangers, especially not her." Noah's wide eyes brimmed with something deeper than imagination. "But, Dad, I heard them. They said Miss Cross's name. They said tomorrow she'll sign, and then stop." Daniel's voice sharpened. Not anger, fear. His eyes flicked toward the dozing security guard. "We'll talk at home." Noah nodded reluctantly, small hands fisting his father's sleeve. Daniel exhaled. He was used to cleaning up messes no one noticed, but tonight felt different. He saw it in the way his son trembled, and in the fleeting glance Vivian had cast back just once, enough to show she'd heard more than she wanted. And that whisper, "They said your name," was about to change everything. Vivian slid into the sedan. Yet instead of reaching for her phone, she stared out at the glass tower she'd built her empire in. The walls gleamed with power, But for the first time she wondered how much of that power was truly hers. For the first time in years, fear edged her heart. Tomorrow she'll sign. Noah's voice echoed like prophecy. The car pulled away. The tower shrank behind her. But Vivian's thoughts stayed locked in that elevator with a boy who shouldn't have known her name and a janitor whose eyes carried a story untold. Something was coming. She could feel it in her bones. And though she didn't know it yet, she had just stepped into a battle that would test everything she thought she knew about trust betrayal and the quiet truths we hide until they can no longer be ignored. The night bled into morning, but Vivian Cross never closed her eyes. Sleep refused to come. The scene in the elevator replayed on a loop, the boy's wide eyes, his urgent whisper, the way he spoke her name as if he had been listening to ghosts. By sunrise, she told herself it was nothing. Children had wild imaginations, especially janitor's kids. And yet, as she adjusted the collar of her tailored suit in the mirror, the woman staring back didn't look like the one she remembered. Her face was flawless, but her eyes carried something she hadn't allowed in years' doubt. Daniel Cole walked Noah to school under a gray autumn sky. The sidewalks glistened with drizzle. Every step crunched through fallen leaves. Neither spoke the silence heavy. "You shouldn't have said her name," Daniel muttered at last. His voice was low-strained. Noah clutched the straps of his backpack, his shoulders small but stiff. "But I heard them, Dad. In that big office with the glass wall, the man with the silver tie and the woman with the red nails. They said tomorrow she'll sign and then she won't own anything anymore." Daniel froze at the corner. The words sliced through him. He bent down his hands, gripping his son's shoulders. "Noah, listen to me. You can't say things like that. People will think you're making it up. And people like her people at the top, they don't listen to janitor's sons." Noah's lip trembled, but his eyes stayed steady. "But I wasn't making it up. I know what I heard." Daniel shut his eyes. His late wife's voice whispered in memory. "Never teach him to silence the truth, even if the world doesn't want to hear it." He let out a long breath. "I believe you. I just don't want you to get hurt." Noah leaned closer, his voice dropping to the same whisper he'd used in the elevator. "They were laughing when they said it, Dad. Like she was stupid, like she was nothing." His fists clenched. "Grandma always said if you see someone getting stepped on, you help, because next time it could be you." Daniel's throat tightened. His mother's wisdom lived in the boy more than in himself. Later that morning, Vivian entered the 40th floor boardroom. Her heels struck sharp against polished marble. Victor Hale, her COO, rose with a wide smile. His silver tie gleamed under the lights. Beside him, Linda Ross, her CFO, shuffled contracts, her crimson nails tapping against the folder. Vivian Victor said smoothly, "We're right on schedule. Tomorrow's signing puts Crosswell Enterprises on the global map. The Japanese investors are thrilled. You'll have nothing to worry about." Vivian's gaze fixed on the tie. Then the nails. And, like a cold wind, Noah's whisper rushed back the man with the silver tie, the woman with the red nails. She forced a smile, though her heart thundered. "I'll review everything tonight. No surprises." For a fraction of a second, Victor's grin faltered. Then it snapped back in place. "Of course. Trust me, we've handled every detail. All you need to do is sign." Linda slid the folder toward her. Yellow tabs marked the spots. Simple, clean. Her voice was sweet, rehearsed. Vivian's hand hovered above the folder. She didn't touch it. Instead, she leaned back. 10 years, Linda. 15 with you, Victor. I've trusted you both more than anyone. Tell me, what do you call someone who trusts without looking?" Victor chuckled, soft and smooth. "A wise leader. One who doesn't waste time micromanaging." But his eyes gave nothing away. That night, long after the boardroom lights dimmed, Vivian returned to the lobby. The building was nearly empty, the hum of fluorescent bulbs filling the marble silence. Near the entrance, Daniel mopped quietly, his broad shoulders bent. On a bench nearby, Noah sketched on a crumpled sheet of paper, his small hands smudged with pencil. Vivian hesitated, then stepped closer. "Mr. Cole." Daniel straightened, startled. "Ma'am." Her gaze drifted to the boy, who looked up, eyes wide. "You?" she said softly. What exactly did you hear? Daniel stiffened. He's just a kid. Imagination runs wild at that age. Noah shook his head. I heard them, the silver tie and the red nails. They said your name, Miss Cross. They said tomorrow you'd sign without reading. The lobby seemed to shrink around them. Every sound echoed the drip of mop water, the faint buzz of a dying light. Vivian's pulse quickened. Why would you say that Noah's voice was small but unshakable? Because when people think someone's invisible, they talk like no one's listening. But I was there. I listened. Vivian's breath caught. She searched the boy's solemn eyes and saw no mischief, only truth. Slowly her gaze turned to Daniel. Why would he lie about something like this? She whispered. Daniel's jaw tightened. He looked at his son, then at her. Sometimes kids see what adults are too busy or too blind to notice. For the first time in years, Vivian felt vulnerable. The boy's warning echoed louder than the silence of the marble lobby, and with chilling clarity one truth broke through her defenses. The janitor's son may have just saved her from losing everything. Morning sunlight poured through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Croswell Enterprises, turning the skyline into a gleaming horizon of ambition. For most, it was inspiring. For Vivian Cross, it was a reminder of how far she had climbed and how easily she could fall. She stood at the head of the boardroom table, her hand resting on the cool glass surface. Noah Cole's warning replayed in her mind. They said your name. Tomorrow, you'll sign without reading. She told herself it was nonsense, a child's wild story. Yet the way his voice had trembled, the way Daniel had looked at her with quiet gravity, gnawed at her like a splinter. Victor Hale sat with his usual poise, his silver tie immaculate. Across from him, Linda Ross tapped crimson nails against a folder, each click sharper than before. Details she had once overlooked now echoed like alarms. Vivian Victor said warmly, rising with polished charm, "You look like you're carrying the weight of the world. After tomorrow, it'll be lighter. This deal is perfect. You'll be remembered as the woman who made Croswell Enterprises a global force." Vivian forced a smile. "I'll be reviewing the contracts again tonight. Every clause." For a flicker of a second, his smile cracked. "Of course. But you don't need to drown yourself in technicalities. That's why you have us. Trust is the cornerstone of leadership." Linda added sweetly, "We've flagged every page with yellow tabs. All you'll need is a pen. Efficiency is power, Vivian." Her words meant as reassurance landed like a threat. Efficiency. Power. Yellow tabs. Noah's voice echoed in her head. "They said you'd sign without reading." Vivian kept her composure. 10 years, Linda. 15 with you, Victor. Do you know what trust feels like when it breaks like glass? It shatters. And when it does, everyone bleeds. The room fell silent. Victor laughed lightly, too practiced. Always the poet. But nothing will break tomorrow. His eyes, however, held no humor. That evening, alone in her office, Vivian stared out at the city lights. The folder lay open on her desk, bright yellow tabs marking each place to sign. She skimmed the dense legal language, but it blurred together. She was Vivian Cross, the woman who never second-guessed. So why was her pen refusing to move? Her phone buzzed. A message from Victor. "Trust us. We'll make you proud tomorrow." Then Linda, "Everything's ready. You'll shine in front of the investors." Their words, once a comfort, now tasted like poison wrapped in silk. She thought of Noah's solemn eyes. They laughed. "They said your name." Her reflection in the glass window looked flawless, but she saw the fracture beneath. The next morning in the marble lobby, she saw Daniel mopping near the doors, Noah sitting nearby with his notebook. Vivian hesitated, then approached. "Mr. Cole." Daniel looked up surprised. "Ma'am?" Her gaze fell to Noah. "May I ask again, what exactly did you hear?" Daniel's jaw tightened. "With respect, Miss Cross, my boy's had enough. He hides in corners because kids push him around. Yes, he hears things, but you can't base decisions on that." Noah looked up, his voice quiet but steady. "They said you were stupid, that you'd sign, and that the day after you wouldn't have a job." Vivian's chest tightened. The boy's words mirrored Victor's message, "Trust us." She crouched down, meeting Noah's gaze. "Why tell me? You don't even know me." Noah's expression didn't waver. "Because I know what it's like when people treat you like you don't matter. They think you won't notice, but you do, and if you can help, you should." The words pierced deeper than any boardroom insult ever had. Vivian rose slowly, her throat tight. Daniel held her gaze, offering no persuasion, only weary honesty. He wasn't using his son to gain favor. He was simply letting her decide what she would do with the truth placed in her hands. Sometimes, Daniel said quietly, "The smallest voices carry warnings the rest of us are too proud to hear." Her heels echoed across the lobby as she walked away, but her heart no longer beat steady. For the first time, Vivian Cross wasn't sure if tomorrow would mark her triumph or her downfall. The fluorescent light above the service hallway flickered, humming like a weary insect. Vivian Cross had always hated this part of the building. Low ceilings, gray walls, the sharp tang of bleach clinging to the air. It felt, beneath her station, a place reserved for those who lived in the shadows of the company she commanded. And yet, tonight, here she was. The elevator had lurched to a halt between floors, throwing her against the side with a jarring thud. Panic pressed against her ribs. She reached for the emergency button, but a voice floated up through the shaft. "Hold on, don't move." Moments later, the hatch creaked open and a hand reached in. Daniel Cole, janitor, mop in hand by day, now framed by the glow of a portable lamp. His face was calm, his movements steady like a man who had done this 100 times before. "Step carefully, Ms. Cross. I'll get you out." She bristled at the command. She was the CEO. She gave orders, she didn't take them. But in that steel box suspended between floors, she found herself obeying. She gripped his calloused hand, strong and unshaking, and let him guide her through the hatch. It was as if she weighed nothing at all. When her heels finally met solid ground, she pulled her hand away, her tone sharp. "What kind of building are you running here, Cole? Elevators stalling, like it's the 70s. Daniel gave a faint smile. "The systems are old. They do what they can. Lucky for you, I know my way around them." Vivian arched a brow. "You know your way around a mop? I didn't realize elevators were in your job description." He crouched and opened a panel, his flashlight cutting through a web of wires. His hands moved with practiced precision, testing, adjusting, coaxing the circuits back to life. Sparks leapt briefly, then steadied into order. Vivian watched curiosity pricking through her irritation. "That's not janitor work." "No," Daniel admitted, not looking up. "It isn't." "You've done this before," she pressed. He paused, meeting her gaze. His eyes held a gravity that stilled her sarcasm. "I used to be an industrial electrician, worked on power grids, construction sites, even corporate towers like this one." She folded her arms, studying him. "So why trade that for pushing a mop?" The elevator hummed back to life, smooth again. He closed the panel and rose, his shoulders outlined in the harsh light. "My wife got sick," he said simply. "Cancer. By the time we found it, it was too late. When she passed, Noah was 6. He needed me more than any company did. So I quit, took work that let me be home every night, work that didn't swallow me whole." The words landed like stones in her chest. Vivian had expected excuses, maybe resentment. Instead, she found sacrifice. "You gave up everything," she said, softer than she intended. Daniel shook his head. "No, I chose. There's a difference. A career can be rebuilt. A little boy's childhood can't." Vivian turned away, her throat tight. Rain hammered against the glass of a nearby window, echoing her own storming thoughts. Her father's betrayal surfaced sharp as broken glass the day he'd signed away her family's company under the guise of strategy. She had promised herself never again to be blind, never again to put people above the numbers. And yet, here stood a man who had done the opposite, placing his son above everything, no matter the cost. "Does Noah know?" she asked quietly. Daniel exhaled. "He knows his dad used to work with machines. He doesn't know I gave it all up for him. He just knows I'm there when he wakes up at night." There was no self-pity in his tone, no pride, just truth. "You don't even realize it," Vivian murmured, almost to herself. "You make the rest of us look hollow." His gaze didn't flinch. "I'm not here to make anyone look like anything. I'm just trying to raise my son right." The elevator chimed down the hall, now fixed and ready. Vivian should have walked away. Instead, her voice held her in place. "If you were still the man you used to be," she asked, her tone sharp again, masking the crack in her composure, "what would you say if people you trusted were plotting against you?" Daniel tilted his head, considering. Then, with a voice as steady as the circuits he'd just repaired, he said, "I'd listen to the quiet warnings, the whispers nobody else takes seriously. They're usually closer to the truth than the loudest speeches." Noah's voice returned to her, haunting and small. "They said your name. Tomorrow, she signs. She loses everything." Vivian's chest tightened. For years, she had trusted Victor and Linda without question. For years, she had mistaken loyalty for competence. What if she'd been blind all along? Daniel gathered his tools and slung the bag over his shoulder. "Elevator's safe now. You won't have trouble tomorrow." He turned to leave. Cole Vivian called. He stopped. "You're not what you seem," she said. A faint smile tugged at his mouth. "Neither are you." And then he was gone, his footsteps fading into the hum of the building, leaving her with the storm outside. And the storm inside. For the first time in years, Vivian felt something she couldn't outmaneuver with contracts or logic. Not just suspicion, not just fear, but the undeniable sense that the janitor who had once been an electrician might be the only man in this building who truly saw the danger coming. "They're doing it again." Noah's whisper barely lifted above the hush of the after-hours lobby. He stood between Daniel and Vivian like a small compass needle trembling toward danger. His hand wrapped tight around his father's sleeve. Rain-silvered streets glowed through the glass. The building hummed with the quiet of machines left to run themselves. Vivian's first instinct was to dismiss him, to say, "It's late, you imagined it," but the boy's eyes held a fear too sharp to be fantasy. Daniel didn't speak. He just nodded once, a signal. "Lead the way." Noah tugged them down the service corridor, past the freight elevator, into the spine of the floor where the air smelled faintly of dust and paper. He moved with the practiced caution of a child who had learned that safety often lived in the unnoticed corners. They stopped at a narrow alcove behind the executive conference room. A section of the acoustic wall panels stood slightly ajar. Noah pressed a finger to his lips. Here he breathed. "You can hear everything." From the other side came the scrape of a chair, the clink of glass on wood, and Victor Hale's baritone smooth as oil. "She'll walk in at 2. We'll have the signature packet ready, yellow tabs where we need them, board consents pre-drafted. The joinder to the new holding entity is buried as Exhibit G. She won't read that far." Linda Ross answered her consonants, sharp, efficient. The management continuity clause flips control immediately on execution. She signs, we file the proxy triggers. By close of business, voting rights are ours. Vivian's chest tightened. Legal words she knew too well twisted into razors. Victor chuckled, certain. "You've spoon-fed her efficiency for years, Linda. Tomorrow is the payoff. She'll thank us for saving her time while she hands us the keys." Silence on their side of the panel except for 3 breaths, the CEO, the janitor, the child held in the dark like a single cord pulled taut. Daniel shifted just enough to place himself between Vivian and the crack of light, a quiet instinct to shield. Vivian didn't see the move so much as feel its steady anchoring. Linda, again lower now, and the side letter. "In my briefcase," Victor said. "It pushes the earn-out to milestones she'll never hit once we restructure. If she gets nervous, we tell her the Japanese expect decisiveness. We make hesitation look like incompetence." A pulse of heat rose in Vivian's chest, anger crowding fear. She reached for the panel, rage wanted a door to kick in, but Daniel's hand found her wrist, gentle grounding. "Not here," he breathed. "Let them keep talking. Let them hang themselves." On the other side, a page turned. Linda's voice sharpened with contempt. "Do you ever wonder if she suspects Victor's answer came with a smile you could hear? Vivian Cross suspects everything except the people closest to her. That's her flaw. Trust dressed as leadership. Comfortable blindness. We've curated it for 15 years. Vivian closed her eyes. The words didn't wound, they confirmed. Every rubber-stamped memo, every late-night reassurance every time she'd chosen speed over scrutiny. It wasn't stupidity. It was fatigue. It was loneliness with a pen. Daniel leaned in his breath, a low threat at her ear. "You're not blind," he whispered. "You're outnumbered. That's different." Footsteps paced the conference room. Ice shifted in a glass. Tomorrow at 1:45, Victor continued. "I walk her through the high points. She signs the consent, the joinder, and the proxy. Linda countersigns. Legal files the Delaware paperwork electronically. Before she finishes her victory speech, controls already transferred." "And?" the kid Linda asked abruptly. "Security mentioned a child on the 40th last week. I don't like variables." Daniel went still, every muscle wired. Vivian glanced at Noah. The boy shrank slightly into his father's side, but didn't step back. He looked up at Daniel, and in that look Vivian saw not fear, but trust. "Dad will handle this." Victor snorted. "A rumor, a janitor's kid playing hide-and-seek. We run a global company, Linda. We don't lose sleep over ghosts." "Ghosts hear everything," Linda muttered. "I want the hallway cleared tomorrow. No staff lingering." "Done." Chairs slid. Papers shuffled into a folder. The meeting was ending. Daniel touched Vivian's shoulder, a signal to move now, or be caught. He guided them back steps, silent, breath-measured, turning corners until the voices dissolved into the building's hum. Only when they reached the service stairwell did anyone speak. Vivian gripped the rail, steadying herself against the cool metal. "I heard it," she said, half to herself, half to the man and boy who had delivered her to the truth. "I heard it myself." Noah looked up, guilt flickering across his small face. "I wasn't trying to spy," he said quickly. "It's just, when I get scared at school I hide and then I listen so I know when it's safe to come out." Vivian crouched to meet him eye to eye. She had been many things in boardrooms, flawless, relentless, untouchable, but never gentle. The word rose now like something rediscovered. "You weren't spying," she said. "You were brave. You warned me when no one else would." Noah's shoulders loosened. Daniel exhaled a little of the steel, leaving his frame. Vivian stood and faced Daniel fully. "You were right. The quiet warnings are the ones to follow." She glanced back toward the invisible room where her future had just been traded over ice. "What do I do now?" Daniel didn't rush. He searched her face, weighing fear against resolve. His voice was calm, the kind that coaxed jammed metal back to life. "You let them believe tomorrow is theirs. You smile. You sign nothing. And while they rehearse their victory, you gather proof that doesn't blink. Proof," she repeated. "Recordings. Transfers. The side letter. And chain of custody," he added. "Law, not drama. A clean trail. People like that count on you blowing up in anger. Don't. Make it boring. Paper beats performance." A breath that might have been a laugh escaped her. "Paper beats performance," she echoed. "You sound like someone who's done more than mop halls." "I've rebuilt systems that failed under pressure," Daniel said. "Different tools, same principle." A long second hung between them. Then Vivian nodded, resolve setting like concrete. "Help me," she said. The words surprised her but didn't frighten her. "Not because you owe me, because you know how to hold a line." Daniel's answer was steady, yes. Noah perked up, sparks of relief lighting his face. "I can help too," he chirped, then quickly added, "not the dangerous parts. I can draw the halls, the spots where people don't notice you, the places where sound carries. I'm good at maps." Vivian's gaze softened. "Then you'll be our cartographer," she said, "and we'll do this right." "Right is slow," Daniel warned, "and careful." "I can do careful," Vivian replied. "I've done careful my whole life. I just forgot to aim it inward." They started up the stairwell together, a CEO, a janitor, and an 8-year-old with a pencil. At the landing, Vivian paused and looked back into the dim shaft. The building hummed like a sleeping animal. Behind the walls, wires weighted circuits ready to carry whatever current they were given clean power or a fatal surge. She turned forward. "Tomorrow," she said, "they will think they're leading me to the pen." Her voice steadied. "Let them. I'll be carrying the light." Daniel's mouth curved not quite a smile. "Then we'll make sure the light doesn't flicker." Noah squeezed both their hands. Small fingers bridging two very different strengths. "Dad?" he asked softly. "Are we safe?" "We're smarter," Daniel said. "Smarter is safer than safe." Vivian drew a breath that reached all the way to the bottom of her lungs. The fear was still there, coiled and watchful, but threaded through it now was something else. Clarity. They stepped out onto the quiet floor. Somewhere Victor and Linda were already arranging tomorrow's props. Somewhere a briefcase held a side letter waiting to cut. And somewhere in the walls between a thin seam of truth had opened just wide enough for 3 people to slip through and change the outcome. For the first time since she had learned how to keep her face from cracking, Vivian allowed herself a single vow. "I will not hand my life to those who mistake my restraint for weakness." The night held its breath. The building listened, and the smallest voice had finally been heard. The janitor's break room was barely more than 4 walls, a humming soda machine, and a scarred table that had seen decades of spilled coffee. Yet, tonight, it felt like a war room. Vivian sat rigid in a metal chair, her blazer folded neatly across her lap as though order might hold her together. Daniel leaned against the counter, arms crossed, the fluorescent light catching the faint silver at his temples. Between them sat Noah, small legs swinging above the floor, clutching his sketchbook like a shield. Silence pressed down heavy with the betrayal that had been exposed only hours earlier. Vivian's breath came in shallow, uneven pulls. Finally, her voice broke the stillness. "I swore it would never happen again." Daniel's gaze lifted. What would never happen again? She hesitated. Revealing weakness felt like standing at the edge of a cliff. Yet the memory of Victor's smug voice pushed her forward. She pressed her palms flat against the table, knuckles pale. "When I was 21, she began, her voice low. My father sold my family's company. Not to protect us, not even to save it. He sold it because it was easy, because money spoke louder than loyalty. I watched him sign away everything my mother built. Do you know what it's like to realize the person you trusted most could trade you like a stock option?" The words landed hard, raw, and jagged. Daniel uncrossed his arms. He didn't offer comfort, only honesty. "I know what it's like to lose trust." One morning, my wife kissed me goodbye. That night I stood in a hospital corridor staring at a chart that said she wasn't coming home. Sometimes trust isn't broken by betrayal, it's stolen, and you never get the chance to fight for it. Vivian's sharpness faltered. For the first time she saw not just a janitor, but a man carved by loss as deep as her own. Noah shifted, tapping his pencil nervously against the sketchbook. His eyes moved between them. "So, what do we do now?" Vivian almost laughed at the simplicity. "What we do," she said, forcing a brittle breath, "is act like nothing's wrong. If I confront Victor without proof, he'll bury me." Daniel pushed away from the counter, voice steady. "Then don't confront him. Not yet. Let them think you're still blind. Let them feel safe enough to brag." Her head snapped toward him. "Play weak, play smart," he corrected, stepping closer. "If you strike now, the evidence vanishes. But if you wait, they'll expose themselves." Before she could respond, Noah leaned forward, words tumbling out. "I can help." Both adults turned startled. "They don't notice me," Noah continued quickly. "When kids at school wanted to push me around, I learned how to disappear. Hide in lockers, crawl under stairs, stay so still they forget I exist." He tapped the sketchbook, a child's map of vents and hallways. "If you need someone to listen, I can do it. I already did." Vivian's chest tightened. "Noah," but Daniel crouched beside his son, taking the book gently. He studied the diagram's messy lines, but surprisingly accurate. He'd seen them taped to the fridge before, but only now realized their meaning. Daniel's voice was calm, but edged with steel. "You've helped enough. This isn't your fight." Noah's eyes dropped. "I just don't want them to win." The words were soft, but they cut deep. Vivian leaned forward, her tone gentler than she intended. "Daniel?" "He's right. They don't see him. That makes him safer than either of us." Daniel's jaw clenched. "Safer. They threatened you. If they realize a child overheard them," he broke off, fists curling. Noah's small voice returned. "I can do it. I want to." The silence after was heavy. Vivian closed her eyes, hearing again Victor's promises, Linda's cruel laugh. When she opened them, steel glinted there. They won't win. Not this time. Her hand moved across the table, not touching his, but close enough to carry weight. "Then we stand together. If they think I'm weak, let them. If they think you're invisible, Noah, let them. And Daniel, if they think you're just the janitor, let them laugh. Until the moment they realize they underestimated the wrong people." Daniel studied her face. Determination burned there, but beneath it he saw the young woman once betrayed by her father, desperate never to be blind again. Slowly he nodded. "All right. But one rule. Noah's safety comes first. If it's evidence or him, we walk away. Understood?" Vivian hesitated, then whispered, "Understood." Noah, sensing victory, scribbled furiously in his sketchbook. "Then we need a plan." Daniel ruffled his hair, though his hand lingered protectively. "Careful, champ. Planning is easy. Surviving, that's the hard part." For the first time that night, Vivian's lips curved into a faint smile. "Then let's make sure we do both." The soda machine hummed louder, like a mechanical heartbeat. In that dingy break room, an unlikely trio, CEO, janitor, and boy, sat bound not by contracts or blood, but by necessity. And somewhere beyond those thin walls, Victor and Linda plotted, certain of their victory. They didn't know that in the shadows an alliance had been forged, fragile, imperfect, dangerous, but stronger than anyone could imagine. By noon, the building had the hush of a church before a verdict. Vivian crossed the executive floor with the calm precision of a surgeon, each step measured, refusing to betray how fast her pulse ran. Victor waited in the private lounge, a glass box cantilevered over the 39th floor espresso. Steaming smile polished to a mirror. Linda stood at the window, her reflection a crimson slash against the city. Vivian Victor purred, rising. The clink of porcelain on saucer rang like a tiny bell. "You look exhausted. Leadership does that. It steals sleep and pays it back in legacy." She set her briefcase down. "Legacy can wait. Clarity can't. Then clarity you'll have." He slid a slim folder across the table. "Talking points for tomorrow. High level only. Investors love brevity." His knuckle tapped the cover, soft but deliberate. "And if I may, your greatest asset has always been trust." Her eyes lifted. "Trust in what?" "In me," he said, smoothly. "In us. You don't need to drown in paper to make the right decision." His smile widened a fraction. "Your trust, Vivian, is my greatest asset." The line landed like a confession disguised as praise. A spoon chimed against porcelain. Linda's laugh followed low and practiced. "We'll keep you above the weeds," Linda added. "The signature packet is color-tabbed yellow, where you sign blue, where I initial green for counsel. You'll be done in 5 minutes. 10 if translators drag." Vivian skimmed the first page. The verbs leapt out a sign, delegate appoint, like fish in dark water pulling her somewhere she didn't want to go. She closed the folder and met Victor's eyes. 5 minutes, she said flatly. "It's mercy," he replied. She let the silence linger long enough to read his confidence, short enough to feed it. Then she slipped the folder into her briefcase. "Tomorrow, I'll rely on you." Victor's smile flashed. As always. They toasted with water, crystal tapping crystal. The ring bled into the room like a hairline crack through glass. In the hallway, Vivian's pulse hammered against her throat. She passed the boardroom, the stage set for tomorrow, and felt the carpet give under her heels as if the floor itself was waiting for the play to begin. A security guard rolled a cart of bottled water to the credenza. He looked up. "Morning, Ms. Cross. Morning, Eddie." He hesitated. "Facilities note, says the 40th's clear tomorrow. No staff lingering. VIP privacy order." Her mouth dried. "From whom? CFO's office." 9 o'clock sharp. She nodded once and walked on until the corner swallowed them both. She found Daniel in the mechanical mezzanine, the low-ceilinged artery where ducts and cables breathed like sleeping animals. He was crouched at a junction box, voltage pen in hand. She waited until he set the tool down. "They're clearing the floor tomorrow," she said. "No staff. Someone doesn't want witnesses." He studied her face. "How close did he stand to you?" "Close enough to call my trust his greatest asset." Corner of Daniel's mouth tugged not a smile. "Then he's already told you his weakness." The words struck so clean she had to grip the rail. For years she'd sworn never to break in front of anyone again, but truth once let in makes a home of your chest. Her breath hitched. The first tear slid before she could stop it. "I built all this," she whispered, "and I let them build a door I can't see." Daniel didn't reach for her or promise the impossible. He simply set his tool bag between them, its weight grounding the air. Trust is fragile. "Let's make sure they break theirs, not yours." She gave a brittle laugh. "How boring," he said. "Relentlessly boring. Paper, timestamps. People get flashy when they steal. We stay dull. Walk me through dull. You've got authority to issue an internal audit pull routine, quarterly compliance. Ask for full print logs from the executive wing badge swipes for finance and legal shred manifests for the last 30 days. Lock email threads containing proxy and joinder, continuity, and side letter." "They'll panic," she said. "They'll relax," he countered. "Audits are white noise to people who think they're smarter than the system. While they relax, we watch where their eyes jump." She steadied. "And the side letter, not in shared drives. Not in minutes. It's in a briefcase or personal cloud, which means they have to carry it into the room." His knuckle tapped the bag. "Confidence makes people sloppy. That's our window." She studied him. "You sound like a man who's pulled a company off a live wire." "I've pulled men off live wires," he said simply. "Principle's the same." She drew herself straighter. "I'll issue the audit pull, quietly. And I'll send Victor a message that sounds like surrender." "Good," Daniel said. "Let him believe a story you've stopped believing." In her office, she typed with fingers that trembled only once. "Victor, appreciate you and Linda carrying the weight. I'll rely on your guidance tomorrow and keep remarks short. Please have the tabs ready. V." His reply came in under a minute. "Knew we could count on you. Big day ahead." She opened a new note to compliance initiate Q2 audit pulls print logs, executive wing badge swipes. Finance/legal shred manifests. 30 days, keyword retention. Hold proxy joinder. Continuity, side letter. Routine schedule. No broadcast. She hit send. In the glass, the city stared back, distant, indifferent, honest. Late afternoon, the trap advertised itself as courtesy. Linda appeared, uninvited latte in one hand, a gift box in the other. "You'll want a good pen for tomorrow," she said, clicking the lid open. "Black lacquer. Fine point. Elegant. Deadly." Vivian turned it in her fingers. "Do you always give gifts that double as instructions?" "I give gifts that ease pressure," Linda replied smoothly. "We've all sacrificed for this company. Let tomorrow be easy." Vivian met her gaze. "Easy. That's mercy, isn't it?" "Mercy," Linda echoed and left a faint perfume and a sharper threat behind. Vivian set the pen down like a trap unsprung. Evening deepened. At the lobby turnstiles, the night guard lowered his voice as Daniel passed with a mop bucket. "Cole, heads up. Tomorrow, the 40th's a ghost town. Orders are orders, but keep the kid away, yeah?" Daniel's grip tightened. "He won't be here." "Good. Just wrong day to be curious." Daniel walked on, jaw-locked, a knot in his chest he hadn't felt since the hospital years ago. He pictured Noah's earnest face, Vivian at the long table, the gift pen glinting like a blade. He let the knot stay. It kept him sharp. They met once more in the service stairwell, the building's quiet spine. Vivian stood 2 steps above, but they were eye to eye. "I told him I'd rely on him," she said. That was the right lie, Daniel answered. "I issued the audit pull. That was the right truth." Her breath trembled. "And if they see through me, they won't," he said. "People drunk on their own cleverness don't see through anything. They only see into mirrors." Her lips curved tired but real. "You sound like a man who used to lead a team." I did. One person. She was 6. We built blanket forts and convinced each other monsters were cowards. How'd you manage that? We stayed together. They stood in the hum, no longer strangers since the moment a child whispered in an elevator. Above them, the boardroom slept in polished shadows. Below, the lobby gleamed like a stage. In between, the net drew tighter, certain of its catch. Vivian straightened hand brushing the rail. "Tomorrow, I act small. Tomorrow," Daniel said, hefting the bag, "you act precise. And when they lean close to claim what isn't theirs..." We let the wire bite. They parted without ceremony. The building listened. Somewhere glasses clinked. Somewhere a folder snapped shut. Somewhere a boy, hunched at a kitchen table, darkened a penciled map, then drew 2 dots close together and wrote above them in crooked letters, "Safe." The night closed its fist around the tower. Morning would pry it open. The memo landed like a cold front, silent, absolute, and without appeal. Within an hour, the 40th floor was stripped bare of carts assistants and casual chatter. Signs on chrome stands by the elevators announced Level 40, restricted 12:03 p.m., executive session. Doors that normally yielded with a swipe now held fast, hard as steel. Down in the lobby, Daniel Cole read the notice twice. A knot pulled tight beneath his sternum. He had told security the night before Noah won't be here. He had promised himself the same. Promises are easy when the world behaves. But by late morning his phone delivered a delayed voicemail. "School dismissed early buses. Delayed Noah is with Mrs. Patel. She can drop him by..." By the time Daniel lifted his head from the mop sink, his boy was already pushing through the revolving doors. Wind-pink cheeks, breathless smile, and a folded drawing clutched like treasure. "Dad." Noah's voice carried under the high ceiling full of that unbreakable, dangerous trust. Daniel's heart stuttered. "Noah, no." He flicked a glance at Eddie at the security desk, then crouched low. "Buddy, today isn't the day. I brought you something." Noah lifted the paper amaze, 3 dots marked VDN, and the word together written beneath. "I'll hang it at home," Daniel said, swallowing the ache. "But you can't go upstairs, not today." A chime sounded. Elevator doors opened. Linda Ross stepped out with 2 aides, stride slicing through the lobby. Crimson nails, clipped rhythm eyes that never glanced their way. Dad Noah whispered, suddenly hushed, "I'll stay by the vending machines. I won't move." Daniel stared at him, torn between fear and faith. Years of hard lessons had taught him this truth. Fear should make you careful, not cruel. He touched Noah's shoulder. "Then don't move. Not an inch. Understand, I'll be invisible." Daniel hated how well his son knew how to disappear. At 12:17, a courier rolled in with a battered crate of bottled water for the executive floor. Daniel signed, automatically, habit overtaking thought. Moments later, a flustered assistant rushed over. "That's supposed to be upstairs by 12:30. Eddie raised both palms. "Restricted, ma'am. Then someone from facilities has to deliver it." Her eyes locked on Daniel. "You. Now." He almost said no, but refusal would draw questions and, worse, send someone else into danger. He squeezed Noah's shoulder. "Stay put." Then he hefted the crate and stepped into the waiting elevator. The doors closed like a mouth. The 40th floor server corridor was colder, humming with mechanical breath. The data room door, gray steel-red badge reader, loomed like a guarded vault. Noah hadn't meant to disobey. He sat by the vending machines. He tried to stay invisible, but he'd watched the crate the elevator his father bent under weight. Something inside him rebelled. When Eddie turned to take a call, Noah slipped into the stream of suits. Their badges blinked green. His small frame vanished between briefcases. By 12:28, the boy who had promised stillness was alone in a place no child belonged. Footsteps echoed heels, brisk, decisive. Noah ducked instinctively, crawling under a rolling ladder parked near the data room. He pressed his palms flat to still their tremor. From the floor shoes became characters polished Oxfords, steel gray pumps the boots of guards. The Oxfords stopped at the badge reader. Beep! The lock clicked. Victor's voice floated back slick and bright. 15 minutes. We staged the packets in here, not the boardroom. Fewer eyes. A guard muttered something. Then Linda's voice cut sharp. I want no one wandering. We've had enough surprises this week. She pivoted heels, scraping closer. Her gaze snagged on the glass reflection, a flicker of movement, too low, too small. She froze. Problem? Victor asked. Linda didn't answer. She took one step toward the ladder. Noah held his breath until his chest burned. Then a door banged down the corridor. Delivery for conference. Daniel called steady by will alone. Linda's head snapped toward the sound. Leave it at the credenza, she ordered coolly, and clear this hallway. Daniel's eyes swept once, just enough to catch the edge of small sneakers beneath the ladder. Lightning surged his blood. He didn't look again. He carried the crate moving as if the world were ordinary. Around the bend, he set the crate down and ducked into a copy alcove phone to his ear in pantomime. Behind the mask, the rescuer in him woke the man who had once pulled colleagues out of live wires and fire. He counted seconds, then circled back through a service passage. The ladder sat untouched. Daniel dropped to a knee handy, reaching into the shadows. He found his son's trembling wrist and pulled him free. Don't talk, Daniel whispered. Walk. Together, they moved as one shadow. Voices swelled behind them, Victor's again, cruel and certain. By the time she thanks us for our stewardship, she'll have nothing left. Laughter followed. Daniel's jaw clenched. He shielded Noah with his body and pressed forward. The elevator bank loomed. Doors slid open and Linda Ross stepped out alone, folder in hand. She stopped, her eyes catching them like prey. The pause stretched. Then her mouth curved not a smile but a calculation. Mr. Cole, she said warmly. Busy day, isn't it? Her gaze flicked to Noah. And who is this? My son. Daniel replied flat, steady. He got turned around looking for the lobby. We're leaving. Linda tilted her head, voice softening. You know, our insurance team hates surprises, especially little ones. She leaned closer. Sometimes children have accidents when parents aren't careful. Noah's hand crushed Daniel's. Daniel met Linda's eyes. Then this parent will be careful. Starting now. He brushed past. She didn't move. She simply let him fit. In the elevator, he pressed lobby with a finger that didn't shake. The doors sealed, cutting off her hollow smile. Only then did he breathe. You okay? I'm sorry, Noah whispered. I just wanted to make sure you weren't alone. Daniel's chest tightened. Being brave doesn't always mean stepping closer, he said. Sometimes it means staying where someone can protect you. The elevator chimed. Lobby. He guided Noah out, keeping his body between him and every line of sight. Eddie's worried glance met his, but no questions came. Daniel nodded later and steered Noah into a side corridor. Vivian was waiting there as if pulled by the gravity of their need. One look at Daniel's face and she reached for Noah, not to claim, but to steady. Are you hurt? Noah shook his head. I messed up. Vivian crouched. You tried to help. Now help me by letting your dad keep you safe. The boy nodded, biting his lip. He pressed the drawing into her hands. This was for him. But maybe it's for you, too. She unfolded it, 3 dots in a maze. Together. Something in her defenses cracked, but did not break. She lifted her eyes to Daniel. What did she say? Daniel's jaw flexed. That accidents happen to kids when parents aren't careful. Vivian's eyes turned cold, not cruel, but resolved. Then let's make this the safest building a child has ever stood in. He searched her face for any tremor of doubt. He found none, only steel tempered by promise. I'll call in a friend, he said. Someone who can document without being seen. If we set this right, Noah never has to be near it again. Vivian slipped the drawing into her portfolio as if it were sacred. Do it. And Daniel. She paused, voice steady. Thank you. For what? For not exploding. Not exploding keeps people alive, he said, glancing at Noah. Starting with you. Starting with me, Noah echoed. They moved as a unit out to the side exit into the city's ordinary noise. Above them, Linda Ross believed she had measured every risk. She hadn't measured a father's line. On the sidewalk, Daniel knelt to his son's level. Home, homework, pizza. Your job is to forget this floor exists until I say otherwise. Noah blinked. What about your job? My job, Daniel said, glancing at Vivian, is to teach the monsters that we don't scare. Vivian's phone buzzed with another trap disguised as a meeting. She silenced it. The drawing rustled in her bag like a stubborn truth. Tomorrow, she murmured, we stop pretending we owe them anything. Daniel nodded. Tomorrow, we make the wire bite. Father and son turned toward the subway. Vivian toward the tower. The city exhaled. The danger had only shown its face, but that finally gave them something stronger than fear to hold a plan, a boundary, and a promise carved into the quiet. The diner on 7th still smelled of burnt coffee and second chances. Neon hummed against the window, tinting the linoleum in a tired pink. Daniel sat in a corner booth back to the wall, eyes fixed on the door. Vivian slid into the seat across from him, the CEO, who had learned to make stillness look like power. Between them sat an empty sugar caddy, neutral ground. A bell jingled. Mark Rivera entered like a man who'd already heard too many lies to be fooled by another. Mid-40s sleeves rolled the quiet economy of a cop who had traded his badge for a PI license and clients who needed truth more than applause. He scanned the room once, then walked straight to their booth. You look the same, Daniel said. Only in bad lighting, Mark replied, setting a battered messenger bag beside him. His eyes shifted to Vivian. You must be the woman who forgot how to be afraid. Vivian didn't blink. I didn't forget, she said. I just ran out of time. Mark's mouth curved slightly. He slid a black case across the table and opened it. Inside lay a body recorder no bigger than a car key. A pen that wasn't just a pen and 2 coin-sized buttons. Ground rules, he said. We record lawfully, or we don't record at all. This is a one-party consent state, if you're in the conversation and you agree the audio's clean. As for video, the boardroom is your property, so hidden cameras are fine with owner authorization. No expectation of privacy in a corporate meeting. He looked squarely at Vivian. I'll need written authorization from you. Clear, she said. No scripts, Mark continued. We're not cops, so entrapment doesn't apply, but juries hate performances. Don't bait, don't lead, ask the questions you'd normally ask, summarize the side letter, walk me through execution, let them brag. Time stamps beat charm, chain of custody beats charisma. Vivian's voice was steady. We launched an internal audit yesterday, badge logs shred. Manifests, keyword. Holds on, proxy joinder continuity, side letters. It'll look routine. That was smart, Mark said. The audit builds a paper spine. These, he gestured to the devices, give it nerves. He pushed the recorder toward her. Clips inside your jacket. 1 click to start, 1 click to stop. The pen's backup. The buttons are cameras, 1 in the smoke detector, 1 in the AV closet. Daniel frowned. What if they clear the floor? I saw the memo, Mark said. Vivian authorizes an AV test today. I'll go in as a vendor badge from a contractor I consult for. We place the gear after hours. He looked to Daniel. You and I sync clocks to NIST time and seal evidence bags on site. Boring is what survives court. The waitress poured coffee. 3 mugs steamed between them. Vivian wrapped her hands around the heat, and, after Mark lowered his voice, once we have what we need, I'll take it straight to the U.S. Attorney's office and the bureau contact who still owes me. They don't kick down doors for allegations. They move on audio-video and a paper trail they can defend. Vivian nodded. Then we give them all 3. At 3:40 p.m., an AV tech with a contractor badge rolled a cart into the executive boardroom. The AV tech was Mark. The cart disguised a Pelican case. Vivian stood by the window, the city glowing under late sun. You have my authorization in writing, she said. Already signed, Mark replied. He pulled down the smoke sensor cover, placed the button camera, and snapped it back. Wide angle. No distortion. It catches the table, not the ceiling. In the AV closet, he positioned the second camera through the vent grill. Redundancy isn't paranoia, it's manners. A slim mic slid under Vivian's chair. Primary audio is your body recorder. This is insurance. He turned to Daniel. Time synced. Daniel confirmed. 58 seconds past the hour. Mark clicked a slate. Device A on at 15:41:02. Device B at 15:41:06. Body recorder test. Vivian clipped the recorder inside her blazer and pressed. A faint buzz. Testing. This is Vivian Cross authorizing audio and video recording in the Crosswell boardroom for security and archival purposes. Mark nodded. Perfect. You sound like a CEO. She gave the faintest smile. I am. When they finished, the room looked untouched, sleek, indifferent waiting. Tomorrow, Mark said, shouldering his bag, you walk in like always. And when they say the thing they can't help but say, we let the wire bite, Daniel finished. Mark studied him. You've changed. Daniel didn't answer. He was listening to air that felt like a heartbeat. At 5:20 p.m. in a small kitchen across town, Noah sat at the table with a workbook and a plate of pizza rolls cooling like moons. He watched his dad pack a canvas pouch Faraday bag Tamperseal's custody log. Do I get a job? Noah asked. Daniel slid him a flyer. After school tutoring. Mrs. Patel, 4 to 6 p.m. He circled the time. Your job is to be exactly there, not upstairs, not late. Noah pouted. But I know the quiet places. I know where vents carry sound. You already told me, Daniel said, tapping the boy's hand-drawn maps. That's enough. Being brave doesn't always mean being close. Noah's voice dropped. What if they hurt you? They won't, Daniel said. People like that only swing when they think you're tied up. You won't be tied up, not when I've got you to come home to. He smoothed Noah's hair. Listen to Mrs. Patel. Learn something boring and beautiful. Math saves people from bad deals. Noah scribbled 3 dots in a tiny maze with the word together. He tore the strip and handed it over. For your pocket. Daniel slipped it behind his license. For my pocket. Dusk cloaked the tower like a verdict. Vivian stood at her office window when her phone buzzed. A text from Victor Investors thrilled for tomorrow. You'll only need 5 minutes. Bring that pen. She typed back, understood. I'll rely on your guidance. Then set the phone down, hands trembling in secret. A knock. Daniel stepped in with Mark behind him. Different kinds of steadiness filled the room, grief's steel and interrogation's calm. Vivian's shoulders lowered half an inch. Compliance pinged, she said. The audit is tugging threads. Badge logs show late-night data room entries. Shred bins spiked last week, Goodmark said. Tomorrow, we give that paper a voice. He held up a clear evidence pouch. When the meeting ends, you walk straight to me. We stop the recorder, seal it, sign the tape. No detours, no victory laps. Vivian nodded. No victory laps. Daniel hesitated at the door. One more thing, he said, voice tight. If Linda so much as breathes in Noah's direction, she won't. Vivian said not as comfort, but as decision. I'll see to it. Daniel's jaw eased. He turned to Mark. 7:30 AV check. 1:30. We stage the room. 2 Hudru. They think they win. And 2:05 Mark finished. We changed the ending. Night fell. The city lit its lamps. Somewhere a saxophone traded loneliness for sound. Vivian lingered in her office, the recorder cool in her hand before slipping it into her blazer. She practiced the question she'd used to open the door. Not defiance, not accusation, just sharp enough to cut. Before I sign... Victor summarized the side letter for the record. She repeated it softer, like a scalpel she could hold steady. Across town, Daniel carried Noah to bed, pausing in the doorway longer than usual. The paper maze pressed warm against his thigh. Mark sat in his car writing in block letters. Placed devices, 15. 41 to 15, 50. Verified power and angles. Synced time to NIST. Custody, Rivera, Cross, AM, Cross Rivera, PM. He tucked it into the case like a prayer. Morning would come hard and bright. The boardroom would smell faintly of lemon oil and ink. Victor would polish his smile. Linda would lay out the pen like a promise. The directors would nod in all the right places. And at the head of the table, a woman who had learned the cost of trust would ask for a summary for the record. The cameras would see. The audio would hear. The paper would have a spine. At 1:59, the clock would click. At 2:00, the doors would open. And at 2:05, if courage held truth, would turn on. The Croswell boardroom had always felt like an altar mahogany, polished to a mirror, shine-high-backed leather chairs aligned like judges, the skyline framed in glass as if the city itself bowed to the power inside. But this morning the air felt heavier, as though the walls themselves braced for rupture. Daniel stood just beyond the double doors mop bucket parked as camouflage. His uniform was clean, but still carried the marks of work. To anyone else, he was invisible. To him, every sound from inside was thunder. At the head of the table, Vivian Cross sat poised, her blazer pressed, her voice steady, though her chest carried the faint vibration of the recorder hidden beneath. Across from her, Victor Hale lounged with a predator's ease, tapping a Mont Blanc pen against a thick stack of contracts. Beside him, Linda Ross distributed bound packets with surgical precision, her smile the polished blade of someone who'd spent years hiding knives in paperwork. "Ladies and gentlemen," Victor said smoothly, "what you have before you is the cleanest path forward. The continuity agreement ensures stability. The joinder clauses align us." And he tapped the final page. "The side letter provides flexibility for outside interests." A director frowned. Side letter. That wasn't in last week's draft. Linda's smile never wavered. Standard housekeeping. We'll summarize for the record. Vivian's pulse hammered once sharp. She steadied her voice into a scalpel. Then, summarize it now for the record. Victor blinked, then leaned forward, smirk widening. Of course, transparency. He flipped a page, savoring the performance. The side letter allocates discretionary funds routed through a Cayman trust. Pure liquidity management. Linda added velvet masking steel. It also keeps strategic partners incentivized. Confidentiality protects shareholder value. Say the number, Vivian pressed. Victor's grin glittered. 200 million. Deferred tax exposure. Everyone wins. The room froze. A cough. A chair shifting. Vivian touched her pocket. The recorder hummed alive. 200 million siphoned offshore. She repeated, voice steady as stone. And you admit? This is your design, Victor chuckled. Admit it's brilliance. This is how companies survive. Without it, Croswell collapses. You should be thanking me. Linda's voice slid in coaxing. Investors already agreed. You're the last signature. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. Vivian's gaze sharpened. Harder for who behind the glass? Daniel's fists clenched, Noah's drawing pressed in his pocket like a brand. He wanted to storm in to tear Victor from his chair, but not yet. At the table, Mark Rivera sat quietly disguised as a compliance consultant. His pen clicked once discreetly, marking the time. Vivian turned a page deliberate. This side letter was, it disclosed in the SEC. Filing, Victor's smirk returned sharper. Of course not. Some truths don't belong in sunlight. Linda's tone dripped with condescension. Vivian, every empire is built on shadows. Yours is no different. Vivian's reply cut the air. Empires built on shadows collapse. Croswell deserves better. Victor's face hardened. Careful. Without us, you're nothing but a figurehead. We carried you after the scandal. We buried the whispers. You owe us. I don't owe you silence. A murmur rippled through the directors. One, gray-haired and loyal for decades, finally spoke Victor. 200 million isn't liquidity management. It's fraud. The word landed like a gavel. Linda's composure cracked, pen tapping too fast. Victor slammed his palm on the table. You think the DOJ cares about accounting footnotes? We built this machine. We can bury any noise she makes. He jabbed a finger at Vivian. She doesn't have the guts. Vivian lifted her chin. Courage isn't the problem. Evidence isn't either. Victor's eyes flicked to her pocket. His smirk returned brittle. A toy recorder. Chain of custody. Admissibility. You think this holds up? Mark's voice entered for the first time calm as stone chain of custody is intact. This meeting was authorized. One-party consent jurisdiction. The audio's clean. Video 2. Every head turned. Victor's smirk shattered. Linda froze. You, Victor spat. Who are you? Mark met his stare. Someone who remembers what justice sounds like. The board fractured into whispers. Linda scrambling for her phone, Victor surging to his feet. Vivian stayed seated, steady as bedrock. You wanted my signature. Here it is. She signed not Victor's packet but the compliance authorization Mark slid forward, sealing the evidence chain. Victor's face flushed crimson. You think you've won? You don't know who I answer to. You don't know what's coming. Vivian finally rose. Her voice carried like a bell. I don't need to know, because when the truth leaves this room it doesn't come back. Outside, Daniel exhaled, chest heaving. He had seen the moment the mask cracked, the moment lies turned brittle. He knew what had cost Vivian to stand in that fire, and that she hadn't stood alone. Through the glass their eyes met. For a heartbeat in the middle of war there was something unshakable between them, trust. And, as security entered, Victor's shouts echoing down the corridor, Daniel whispered to himself, at 2:05. The truth turned on. The first sound was the radio 2 clipped syllables crackling outside the boardroom doors. The second was the command sharp as a blade. Federal agents, nobody move. The double doors opened in one sweep. Dark windbreakers filled the room, block letters FBI stamped across their backs. Their movements were quiet, practiced, efficient. An older agent, with gray at his temples, stepped forward, palm raised. Victor Hale. Linda Ross. Hands where I can see them. Pens froze, chairs stilled. Even the skyline outside seemed to pause. Victor tried to laugh. This is corporate theater, agent. You're interrupting a board meeting. Then I'll be brief, the agent said. Mr. Hale, Ms. Ross, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit wire fraud, securities fraud, and money laundering. We have a signed warrant, asset freeze orders, and preservation notices for all systems. Stand. A sound followed, unmistakable. Metal kissing metal. Click, click. The room inhaled as one. Linda's voice broke. You can't. This is a misunderstanding. We were protecting shareholder value. The agent didn't look at her. You have the right to remain silent. I suggest you use it. Across the table, Vivian sat very still, her hand resting over the recorder hidden in her blazer. She didn't smile. She didn't flinch. When Victor's eyes finally met hers, she saw what arrogance looks like when it realizes it's mortal. You did this, he hissed. I told the truth, she said evenly. It walked here on its own. Mark Rivera stood. The quiet consultant dropped his disguise. From his bag he produced a sealed evidence pouch. Chain of custody begins now, he said. Voice calm, professional. Primary audio from Ms. Cross. Secondary audio under her chair. 2 cameras, ceiling sensor, and AV vent. All time synced. My authorization letters and placement log are inside. The agent checked the seals and nodded. Thank you for keeping this clean. He gestured to his team. Photograph everything. Bag all devices, laptops, and the red briefcase by Mr. Hale. Everything logged. One director whispered, Agent. What happens to the company? Today, the agent replied. It keeps breathing. Our orders freeze the money and preserve the records. Your job is to cooperate. Victor lurched to his feet, cuffs biting his wrists. You think you've won? You don't know the people behind me. Vivian rose. Her voice was steady. No, but now they know me. The agents led Victor and Linda out. Daniel waited in the corridor. He didn't gloat. He simply watched relief softening the tension in his shoulders. As Linda passed, she cut him a sideways glance, her old threat in a thin smile. He spoke clearly so the hall could hear. "You said kids have accidents when parents aren't careful." For the first time, something flickered across her face, shame, or maybe calculation. She looked away. Inside the boardroom, agents cataloged evidence. Mark initialed seals. Vivian exhaled a small tremor shaking loose from her chest. Daniel stepped forward as if finally invited into the space she had held alone. "You held," he said. She nodded. Her eyes were bright. "Only because you taught me how to be boring." A laugh slipped out of him. "Boring wins court. Boring saved a company. Truth did that," he said. "Boring just carried it." An agent with kind eyes approached. "Ms. Cross, we'll need your statement at the field office this afternoon. You're not under investigation. You're a witness. We'll arrange a secure exit." Vivian looked toward the elevators, the glass walls, the hundreds of employees who had no idea the ground had shifted beneath them. "Give me 5 minutes," she said. "I need to speak to my people." 5. The agent agreed. She turned to Mark. "Call comms. Internal only. We state facts. We protect everyone who wasn't involved." Daniel spoke softly. "Noah's with Mrs. Patel. I can keep him away until—" "Bring him," Vivian said, quickly surprising herself. "Let him see the world when it tells the truth." The lobby buzzed with rumors. Security held a loose cordon. Phones hovered. Vivian stepped onto a small riser, normally reserved for holiday flowers. She had no speech. She didn't need one. "Some of you heard what happened upstairs," she began. Voice steady through the atrium. "Law enforcement executed warrants in our boardroom. 2 senior executives were arrested. They do not speak for Crosswell. They will never speak for Crosswell again." A ripple passed through the crowd. Heads turned. Whispers quieted. "We are not an empire built on shadows," she continued. "We are a company built on work your work. Your paychecks will clear. Your projects will continue. Our records are being preserved. If anyone asks you to hide anything, refuse. If anyone threatens you, you come to me." Silence fell, not fear this time, but trust beginning to grow. Then a child's voice cut through. Ms. Vivian Noah barreled through the crowd, hair-wild backpack bouncing. Daniel followed, scanning faces steady as ever. Noah didn't stop. He collided with Vivian, wrapping small arms around her waist. For the first time in years, Vivian let herself fold. She crouched down and held him tight, the world shrinking to his heartbeat against her ribs. "You saved me," she whispered. Noah pulled back, serious. "You saved you. I just told you where the quiet was." Daniel stood close enough to protect, far enough to give space. His chest finally slowed the storm easing inside him. Agent Morales, the kind-eyed one, spoke gently. Cross. "We can escort you now." Vivian smoothed Noah's hair. She looked at Daniel. "Come with me," she said, then to Noah. "And you, counselor?" "I'm not a counselor," Noah protested. "You are today," she answered. The field office was plain neutral carpet, plastic cups of water fluorescent light. No skyline, no mahogany. Just honesty. Vivian gave her statement. Dates, names, the words Victor had trusted to the dark. Mark handed over sealed bags. Device A, body audio. Device B, chair audio. Devices C and D, cameras. Signed and logged. Agent Morales accepted them. "We'll present this to the U.S. Attorney today. First court appearance tomorrow. With these recordings, this case has teeth." Noah raised his hand, small voice serious. "Will they go to prison?" Morales leaned forward. "That's up to a judge and jury. But when people steal, we make it hard for them to keep what isn't theirs." Noah nodded, satisfied. Vivian turned to Daniel. "I owe you," he stopped her. "Don't finish that. Owing turns gratitude into a contract." His voice softened. "Let it be family instead." Something unguarded passed between them, recognition, not rescue. 8 weeks later, the verdict came. Victor Hale, guilty on all counts. Linda Ross, guilty on conspiracy and money laundering after a plea. The judge spoke of trust betrayed markets that depend on daylight and ordinary people harmed. Sentencing would follow. Assets would be forfeited. Outside cameras swarmed. Vivian paused only once. Integrity isn't a slogan, she told the microphones. It's payroll. It's pensions. It's the roof over families. Then she walked on. On the courthouse steps, Noah slipped his hand into hers. So? It's over, Daniel answered. The worst part is, now we build the better part. Vivian looked at them both, father and son, and felt her old life finally loosen its grip. They walked slowly to the curb, past microphones, past shadows, into the winter sun that had fought its way through clouds. At the corner, Noah tugged them to a stop. "Can we get pizza?" he asked, as if justice needed cheese to stick. Daniel laughed. "Kids got priorities." Vivian smiled. Not the investor smile, but one born at the eyes spreading all the way down. "Pizza," she said. And then she looked at Noah. "Maybe you help me design something for kids who know where the quiet is." His grin was instant. "I can draw it tonight." "Good," Daniel said, "because tomorrow starts early." They crossed with the light. 3 shadows braided on the crosswalk. No titles, no glass walls. Just the steady math of ordinary steps carrying them from the place where truth was recorded to the simple places where healing begins, a red checkered table, a slice too hot to hold, and a promise no one needed to sign. Behind them, a tower kept breathing. Ahead, a door jingled open, and for the first time in a long time the world felt correctly sized. The snow came late that winter, laying a hush over the city like a white quilt, softening even the sharp edges of glass and steel. Daniel stood at the curb in front of a modest 2-story brick house tucked into a quiet neighborhood. It wasn't grand, but it had a porch swing, a narrow walkway lined with old maples, and a chimney that still remembered the smell of wood smoke. He shifted Noah's backpack higher on his shoulder. "Well, buddy," he said, voice warm with disbelief, "this is it. What do you think?" Noah's eyes widened as if he were seeing a castle. "It has a porch, Dad." "Can we get a dog?" "Dogs love porches." Daniel laughed, rough and full, the kind of laugh he hadn't let himself have in years. "Let's start with a welcome mat before we add a dog." A sleek, black car pulled up, tires crunching against the snow. Vivian stepped out wrapped in a long wool coat, her breath blooming white in the air. She looked at the house, then at the boy, then at the man who had walked through fire with her. "It feels like the right place," she said softly. Daniel studied her face, half expecting the guarded mask of a CEO, but there was none. Just a woman who had been bruised, broken, and healed, and was still standing. Inside, the house smelled faintly of cedar and fresh paint. The realtor had called it cozy. To Daniel, it felt like possibility. To Noah, it felt like running space. He darted down hallways announcing every discovery as if he'd found treasure. "There's a fireplace. A real one. And 2 bedrooms upstairs. Dad, 2 bedrooms. That means one for me and one for—" He stopped, cheeks, pinking eyes flicking toward Vivian. Vivian crouched down, reading the hope trembling in his voice. "For friends," she said gently, "or for when I stay late, helping with homework. This house can hold more than walls, Noah. It can hold us." Noah grinned, gap-toothed, the smile of a boy who no longer had to hide. Daniel leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. "You say that like you're signing a contract." Vivian's gaze held steady. Not a contract. A promise. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was rich, like the pause before music begins. That evening they built their first fire. Daniel fumbled with kindling, muttering until Vivian laughed and nudged him aside. "Step aside, Janitor. I've handled tougher negotiations than this fireplace." "Is that so?" Daniel teased. "Show me the boardroom strategy for pine logs." Eventually the flames caught small at first, then steady, washing the room in gold. They ate pizza cross-legged on the living room floor, paper plates balanced on knees-hot cheese stretching into laughter. Noah stuffed a slice into his mouth and muffled, "Best pizza ever." Vivian smiled. That's because victory changes the flavor of everything. Daniel looked at her. Really looked and felt the truth of it. Victory wasn't the headlines or the verdict. It was this one boy laughing with his mouth full, one woman leaning against the hearth, and the heartbeat of a house learning their names. Later, when Noah had fallen asleep upstairs under a new blanket, Daniel and Vivian sat by the fading fire. The silence between them was tender, not heavy. "I keep thinking about what you said that night," Vivian murmured. "Boring wins court." Daniel chuckled. "Not my most romantic line. It was perfect," she said, "because it was true, and because it was you." He turned toward her shadows, painting his face. "Vivian, we've been standing in other people's storms for so long. What if just once we stood still for ourselves?" Her breath caught. She reached for his hand, their fingers locking together as if they'd been practicing it for years. "Then let's stand still," she whispered. Spring came slow and patient. Buds cracked open on the old maples. The porch swing creaked to a new rhythm. Mornings of coffee, evenings of conversation. Noah's laughter spilled out of an upstairs window like music. Vivian smiled more often, and not because of shareholders or strategy, because of life. One Saturday, Noah dragged a box of crayons to the kitchen table. "I'm drawing us," he announced. "Go easy on the wrinkles," Daniel teased. Noah smirked. "Don't worry, Dad. I'll make you look younger than you act." Vivian leaned over his shoulder. On the paper, 3 stick figures held hands in front of a house. Above them, a crooked sun shone, and under their feet, written in a child's uneven scrawl, were the words, "Home, finally." Vivian pressed a hand to her mouth, eyes bright. Daniel brushed his son's hair back. "Not bad, kid," he said, voice thick. "Not bad at all," Vivian whispered. In that kitchen with crayons, coffee mugs, and the hum of a refrigerator just starting its life with them, they realized something simple. Justice had given them peace. But love, the quiet, ordinary kind, had given them home. That night, as Daniel turned off the last light and looked out at the street lined with maples, he whispered, not to any god, not to any boardroom, but to life itself. "Thank you for letting me start over." Vivian's arms slipped around him from behind. "Not start over," she murmured against his shoulder. "Start home." Upstairs, a boy dreamed without fear, because for the first time the quiet he heard wasn't danger. It was belonging. The fire of their battles had burned away the shadows. What remained was warm human and unshakably true. A new home, a new family, a new beginning, and it was enough. And so their story reminds us that even in the quietest corners, love can still find a home. Healing doesn't always arrive with fireworks. It comes in the gentle laughter of a child, the warmth of a hand held, and the promise of a tomorrow that feels safe. Now, I'd love to hear from you. Where in the world are you listening from tonight? Share your thoughts in the comments. I read every single one, and your stories inspire me just as much as these tales. If this story touched your heart, please subscribe to the channel and join our community of listeners who believe in hope, kindness, and second chances. And finally, thank you. Truly, thank you for giving your time to be here, to feel, to remember, and to dream with me. Until the next story, may you carry this light into your own life.